Hi, welcome to my podcast. My name is Nadia, and today we are going to be exploring the complex world of food and how it fits in modern nutrition. With me today, I have James Collier, the co-founder of Huel, but not only that, he is also a registered nutritionist and a former NHS dietitian with over 25 years of experience. Along with that, he's quite active on social media and has a blog called Thought for Food, where he shares his perspective and his wisdom about food and nutrition. So, without further ado, let's welcome James Collier. James, it's really an honor to have you here.
Thanks very much. Thanks for inviting me.
I think it would be a good idea to go through some common misconceptions that people have about processed food. So I'm going to give you a misconception, and I want your view on that misconception. So the first one is processing destroys all nutrients. Is that true?
That's not true. I mean, and like I mentioned, processing has been done for thousands of years, and there's a good reason for that. If we hadn't been processing food, then we probably wouldn't be the humans we are today. When some populations started to be able to digest milk, sugar, lactose in adulthood, 1/3 of the world, then it meant we could then make products like cheese and yogurt, which had to go through a process, which meant through times of starvation, that cheese has a longer shelf life than a pint of milk. So it allowed people to flourish. Other processes as well. I mean, bread making, of course. When you have grains, you typically can't, if you just to eat the grain itself, you can't get much out of it. It's a very hard seed. You need to break that seed down. And even just crushing it, well, that's all very fine, but you still can't get much out of the flour. But when you add yeast to it and allow the yeast to do its stuff, then suddenly you can get all the nutrition from the grains. So food processing has been integral to human evolution, and we wouldn't be doing what we are today. Now, as far as nutrients, well, I've just revealed how some processing can get more nutrients, but there's a lot more to it as well. Even some more modern processes have allowed certain subgroups to get a bunch of nutrients that they've been missing out on. The obvious example here is vegans or people that follow a predominantly plant diet and avoid animal produce lack in vitamin B12, which is very rare in the plant world. In fact, more commonly eaten plant foods, you don't have vitamin B12 in it, but through fortification, which is a form of processing, you can add very easily, very cheaply, add vitamin B12 to the food, and all the other vitamins and minerals as well. Iron's another obvious example where a lot of people, especially females, aren't having enough iron, so we can add certain forms of iron. The other form is, now bread, going back to my bread analogy, with more modern forms of bread making, and I don't just mean the ultra processed breads, I mean when making white flour, which has been done for a few hundred years, I believe, of some of the B vitamins like vitamin B9, folate is lost. So that is now can be added back into modern breads quite easily, and then there's no loss of that, and that helps an array of things. One of the more obvious ones is people need a good intake of folate in the early stages of pregnancy to prevent spina bifida in the newborn.
The second misconception is artificial preservatives are always harmful. How true is that?
Profoundly untrue, for the quick answer. Artificial. People get very emotional when they hear the word synthetic, artificial, made in the lab. There's another phrase that's going around. So what? Exactly the same, in many cases, exactly the same substance. And if it comes naturally, it's just produced in a lab. And what does that even mean? It's not created out of nothing. It's usually created out of other foodstuffs or other naturally occurring substances. So preservatives have changed the global food system. They've allowed populations who previously didn't have much access to certain foods to get those foods, increase their shelf life, which reduces contamination, reduces, and as well as that, it allows people to enjoy a wider range of foods that they previously didn't have access to. Now, we've been preserving food for thousands of years. Salt is an obvious one. Drying food in hot environments, dried meat, and that's in warmer regions. In colder regions, well, they were blessed with having natural freezers and refrigerators just from the cold weather. So both ends can preserve. But that wasn't good enough because it's still hard to transport some of these foods, at least hygienically. So this is where preservatives, natural preservatives or artificial preservatives come in.
The third one would be processed food, and that's actually quite a lot of public figures have been putting an emphasis on that, saying that processed food are always addictive.
Well, I can think of a number of processed foods that I really can't stand. So by definition, if you don't like something, well, then it's really not addictive. Now, there is a problem with some of the junk food, and I like the term junk food, which we'll come to why I like that term later on, I'm sure. The problem is some of these junk foods are borderline addictive, but not all of them. It's, Pringles, right? They actually use the term in their marketing campaign. Once you pop, you can't stop. Right? They actually brag about it. I don't know if they're doing it still now, but they used to. I mean, I can polish off a tube of Pringles, no problem. And I probably feel a bit shit afterwards. And a lot of people are chocoholics. You've heard the scenario that people can't leave a bar of chocolate. They can't just have a couple of chunks. It's some processed foods can be addictive. Now, the word addictive is up for interpretation, and I know people that work in drug rehab centres and alcoholic rehab centres would probably argue with that because it's a different chemical process, but they still involve dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter that helps us want to seek out things we enjoy. In this case, food. It's complicated. I'm not a psychologist who can talk about the word addiction, but I think as a flippant term, some processed foods are indeed addictive. But look at some of these top Michelin star chefs, right? They've learned the skills to manipulate food on the plate to be, so they are absolutely delightful. They're just doing it maybe without adding so-called ultra-processed additives. They've just got the flair for it and experience. So it doesn't have to be the processed foods that are addictive or the ultra-processed foods that are addictive. It can just be food that's addictive. I mean, and we're hardwired this way. Take, our ancestors, right, many millennia ago. If they were walking through plains of the African savannah, they came across some pineapples by some water, and they thought, wow, okay, I'm going to carry these back for my buddies, but more importantly, I can only carry so many. I'm going to stuff as many into my face as possible, because by the time I've gone back to the camp and brought my friends back to grab them all, those baboons down the road have probably polished them off. So we're hardwired to crave those foods and to consume them rapidly till our heart's content. I mean, pineapple's a great example. I could be addicted to pineapple.
Really?